actually works and see how it's been successful with this particular case. And after that, we welcome any questions. We will talk about the referral process, and DCFS will actually share some of the information as well, but we'll show you the video briefly.
Yes, so this is a family reunification case where PCIT was used, that you'll see.
So while she's starting the video, no teenagers then? Can't do this with teenagers?
Yeah, this is a, First Five's funding is limited to 0 to 5 by state law, and so we fund things 0 to 5. It is a practice that can be, it has evidence from 2 to 7 years old. So there are other services out there for other populations, but this is sort of our contribution to the young children's service array, in LA County.
Unless the teenager is a parent.
Yeah, the application would be appropriate for teenagers if they were parents of a child who's roughly in that 2 to 5 age.
You'll see in the video too, again, why it's more effective for the younger children.
Why do you start with 2, Bill? Why can't you start with like a 1-year-old?
Just I think, well,
Well, I think we can go younger than 2, but ask me that question after you watch the video, and it'll make more sense.
Okay. And the funding for the 2 to 7, how does that funded? Because
so we fund, what we do as First Five, we fund the training year. So we're funding the first year, we're getting these agencies up in training, and as Daphne said, once the agency is trained, then they can bill Medi-Cal, and Medi-Cal supports through the Department of Mental Health, and they can bill to ages 2 to 7. So once the agency's been trained, gone through their training, they can go to 7-year-olds.
When 2-year-old Richard looks into his mama's eyes, he knows the true meaning of tender, loving care. His older brother Doyle hasn't always been so sure.
He was so afraid. He was in the corner shaking, back then, scared. He would run to a stranger before he would run to me.
An 18-year-old single mother with limited parenting skills, Tammy Victor was raising her children in the same abusive way she had been raised.
I slapped my son. I threw him at a wall. I kicked him, punched him, slapped him. All those scream, holler, cursed at him, threw him around. All those mean things to that boy.
Ultimately, Tammy herself called the police and asked for help. What she got was 6 months in jail for child abuse. Richard and Doyle were put into foster care until the courts were satisfied they would be safe with their mother.
So I went to go visit my kids, and they were just sitting there looking at me and laughing. Hi, Mama, I love you, like that. I'm like, why do they love me? How can they love their mom? After all I put them through, how can I get love back from them?
If you're 4 years old, regardless of what your mom or dad does to you, you still love them, you still need them. You don't just need them as a figure, you need them every single day in your life.
Anthony Urquiza is a psychologist at the UC Davis Medical Center. He oversees a new program there aimed at helping abusive parents find new ways to discipline. Like Tammy, most of his clients are sent to him through the courts. It's a last-ditch effort to get their kids back.
We had to change the relationship, and we had to fundamentally change some of the things that parents do with their child to make them be better parents.
Mommy has something to tell you guys, okay? Now, this is playtime, okay? In special playtime, we play nice with all the toys.
This one-on-one therapy session uses a traditional parenting model called PCIT, Parent-Child Interaction Therapy. Urquiza hopes the basic parenting principles of PCIT will teach Tammy a better way to get her kids to behave.
You need to praise your child for the things that they do or that are appropriate. You need to describe appropriate behavior, give them a lot of attention for what they're doing that's okay and appropriate. And as soon as they do something that's not appropriate, then to ignore that behavior.
You might want to go into it, ignore, and start playing with Doyle, and gosh, I'd love to play with Richard if he were sitting nice at his seat.
Yeah, if Richard was sitting nice in the seat, he could play with us.
Through an earpiece, Tammy is being coached by a therapist to praise good behavior and ignore the bad. Not an easy thing to do when Richard is in the midst of a temper tantrum. It's this kind of situation that used to result in abuse.
If he would come up with us and play, we could have so much fun.
Great ignoring, Tammy. Really good
So
ignoring.
much fun with us, but that's okay.
It's great because you are in control right now.
The research bears it out. By breaking down old abusive patterns, Tammy is helping her children build self-esteem. And as an inherent bonus, she is becoming a better parent.
You have to give them some skills, but you also have to change the quality of the relationship so that it is self-sufficient in generating a lot of the empathy, a lot of the positive attention. That's what we have to change so that parents, even when they're at their most frustrated, are still not going to hit their child.
Okay, Tammy, why don't you turn to Richard and pat him on the back and kind of rub his back and say, I like it when you're quiet.
Yeah, I know.
I'd really like for you to come back and play at the table.
Here's where Tammy must apply her new skills. Richard's temper tantrum has lasted a very trying 15 minutes. Can she get her son to cooperate without being physically abusive?
Would you come to the table for me? Oh, thank you so much. Great job, yes.
So I think she has a really good chance to be safe with her kids in the future, to work with her kids so that they can be good, healthy kids, feel good about themselves, feel good about their mom. She's not out of the woods yet, but she's got a really good chance.
You like this one? Okay.
Quite often, children placed in foster care are not reunited with their parents. But Tammy has proven people can change when something as precious as a child is at stake.
Good job. Doyle see me change, right? Doyle can grow up and say, okay, well, my mommy changed. Doyle knows now. You know, he has an idea that people can be different. Give me a, oh, thank you.
Learning to be a better parent is an ongoing, lifetime lesson. And the court system believes Tammy has learned hers. Today, she has full custody of her sons, and Richard and Doyle have a mother who makes them feel loved and valued and safe.
Happiness, a lot of happiness, a lot of fun times, a lot of saying to myself and to my kids, you know what, we made it. Mommy made it. Great job.
So any thoughts or questions after seeing that video?
How was the information of her positive progress presented to the court? Was it in just written reports, or did the court actually see this video of it?
Actually, someone does know about this particular case.
Not usually do we show videos. I think it's been asked a couple times. Not usually do we show videos. But we, and I say we as therapists who do PCIT, we're not in the place to make a decision about whether families should reunify or not. We are in the place to make a decision that our client, which is this child and their parent, work hard to be able to successfully get through PCIT. And as a product of that, we're able to write a letter to the court that says, this parent has successfully graduated from PCIT. The quality of this relationship is better, they have much better parenting skills. The child's behavioral problems have significantly reduced. And about a month and a half ago, we talked to the judges upstairs about PCIT and showed them the same video with the idea that they would be educated. So when they got a letter from the PCIT therapist that says they are doing great, and we told them about the research on recidivism, that they are doing great, they successfully graduated from PCIT, that it would carry a bit more weight, because they know what that means. So as well as the fact that, because I'm a little obsessive compulsive about some things, that built into PCIT is not just do these things like parenting classes. The great secret here is parenting classes don't work, by the way, in case you didn't know that. We expect parents to acquire the skills to be a good, effective parent, to be able to demonstrate those skills to us, and to have a mastery of those skills. So it's not just we tell them something and then we expect that they learn it and then they go home and do those things. They have to demonstrate those skills in front of us. And when they do, we can honestly, reliably, and with confidence write that letter to the court that says they successfully graduated from PCIT. And this is the demonstration. We don't usually show them the videotape, but we absolutely include pre-post measures, because we do use pre-post measures, and real specific behaviors that they've demonstrated that they've acquired as a product of being involved in succeeding in PCIT.
What's the cost for a parent to attend this program?
There isn't a cost.
No cost.
Yeah, it's as long as a family has Medi-Cal, which just about, most of the DCFS cases, not all, but most would, there wouldn't be any cost for the program.
So they just need to meet medical necessity, be within the age range, and there's also other referral criteria.
So just to clarify, it's a child meeting medical necessity. The child's behavior has to be met.
So, is it fair to say if the child has Medi-Cal, not the parent?
Right. But the child
They
is.
can qualify for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. So then the child doesn't need to be in the parent's care for them to have a PCIT class?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated. If the child has behavioral problems and he's in foster care, then I think you should do PCIT with that child and the foster parent, or with that child and an aunt and uncle or grandparents if it's a kinship care issue.
Why?
Because you have a child with disruptive behavior problems.
And is it not ideal to be able to teach the parent how to deal with the behavioral? I mean, I know what you're saying. You're saying because they're right there taking care of them at the time, but I just, as parent attorney, we want to shy away from anybody else taking that class.
No,
with our
and it's a
child.
really important question, and I'm glad you asked it, so I wanted to make sure that I get this really clear. If a child has some significant behavior problems, they are more difficult to care for. And you guys know that means they bounce from foster home to foster home to foster home. And that's bad in every single way that you can imagine. So it's important for us to try to sustain foster placements or kinship caregiver placements because they bounce out of aunt's house just the same. So my argument is we need to provide PCIT to them to sustain that placement. I realize that's not reunification, but it does in fact help that child to be better prepared to reunify with the parent. Now the second part to the question is, when do I start PCIT with my parent so I can facilitate reunification? And really the foundation to that is, it's not fair to do PCIT with a parent who has 1 hour a week of visitation, because there's no effective relationship there. You have to have an ongoing relationship to be able to do PCIT, because we're not just changing behaviors. We're changing the quality of the relationship between the parent and the child. And so when your parent is gearing up towards being able to have their child return to their care, and that's when you're looking at overnight visitations and those kinds of things, then I would push really hard for them to get into PCIT so we can increase the likelihood that that's going to be a successful reunification. But if it's just 1 hour visitation, those cases, 1 hour supervised visitation is not going to cut it with regard to making change.
That's never going to be the order in a reunification.
Right.
That used to be the order 20 years ago.
But that sort of thing, what I'm arguing for is we're not changing behaviors, we're changing relationships, and that means that parent and that child has to have some sustained ongoing contact to be able to change the qualities of that relationship.
Can I just interject? I think what we put is, because there's an active family reunification process going on. So obviously, if it's, there has to be a fair amount of time where caregiver and child are together. And so, I think it's just I think what Anthony is alluding to is sort of an active phase in family reunification. So I think what we're trying to demonstrate is that this process can be useful to any of these populations. We think it's useful in family reunification, but we also think it can be useful in kinship cases. We also think it can be useful to the AB 12 teen parent cases. So we you know, and the rest of these populations, not necessarily, you know, mutually exclusive categories.
Speaking specifically to the process, how often are the PCIT sessions, and what's an average length of time of the program that the children and the parents participate?
So I think I mean, Anthony certainly can speak to this, but.
It's an hour a week. It's not a lot. A little bit of homework on the part of the parent, but really an hour a week. And it was designed for 14 weeks, but for child welfare populations, it's closer to about 20 weeks. So we're not talking about, you know, the next 3 years you're in therapy. We're talking about the next 3.5 months you're in therapy.
So if we had a visitation order, that normally the courts, it's at least 2 times a week, 2 hours each visit, or some courts give 3 times a week, 3 hours each visit. If we had a disposition, meaning the child's placed outside of the home, and it was a physical abuse, hitting the child, throwing the child, you know, basically physical abuse, anger issues, and we sent like a progress report, so the mother had her 2 or 3 times a week, she was in individual counseling, then sent a progress report 3 months after the dispo to then refer this case to your program, because we don't want to wait too long in this situation that we're sort of, you know, not taking advantage of the good things that your program has. But most courts here give more than 1 time a week, or at the very beginning say, okay, we want the 2 visits a week, but now we also want 1 hour of basically, it's like interactive parenting. Isn't that a similar type of situation?
Well, it is in fact, there's a specific protocol and it's a therapy with some specific goals, not just sort of.
We just don't want to
anything.
wait till 6 months, or, because a child under 3, which you're sort of coming in, but a child over 3, we're very limited, and this seems really appropriate for a lot of our cases that should start as soon as we can, considering that other things.
And I'll tell you, an answer that may not be really good for your thinking, but it is what I think. It's a very powerful intervention. So it is in your behalf, advocating for your clients, to get them into PCIT. I'm a child psychologist, and my position is when you have a parent who and a family who are moving towards reunification, absolutely push for it, and I'm on your side because I think parents need to be with kids and kids need to be with parents. But you know that there are parents who are not moving towards reunification, and it is your job to advocate for them anyway. And I'm not sure that I can support that if they're really not effectively moving, because that really is difficult for the child to be improving the quality of the relationship that they have with their parent, only to have the parent fall apart on their end because of drug and alcohol and whatever. And then you have this kid who is, for lack of a better word, closer and more affectionate and more loving towards their mom or their dad because of what we've done with PCIT, and have it fall apart. So when the key phrase is active. If they're active and they're moving towards reunification, that is cool. And I think you should advocate for PCIT.
If a child goes through PCIT with one caregiver, would the child be eligible for a second round of PCIT with a different caregiver? So in other words, if you're stabilizing a placement and then you're moving into active reunification, would the child be eligible to participate again with a different
I don't know about the word eligibility, because that's a DMH issue, but we can do PCIT with both parents together, or one parent first and then the next parent.
We often do it with foster parents.
Right,
Right.
Absolutely.
And as far as eligibility through DMH and with Medi-Cal, yes, as long as it's a different parent.
What if the child, because you're, excuse me for interrupting, but if you start out with the foster parent and there's disruptive behavior and a lot of behavioral problems because of what the parent has done, and they really succeed with the foster mother in doing that, so there's no more really bad behavioral problems, then we're an attorney, you know, for a parent, and we say, we want to start this type of program too, and they say, well, they don't meet the eligibility because this child's a perfect little angel now with the foster parent.
I
Do we
don't
run
have,
that risk?
I don't have that video. We have a wonderful series of videos, Dr. Timmer and I, of this kid, because you know these kids are in violent, aggressive, DV kinds of homes, and then they acquire those skills and they become what I called before disruptive, and they're really difficult kids. They're other kids who get bounced from, even at the age of 4, from foster home to foster home to foster home. And so we do PCIT with the foster parent and that child, and they get better. And the series of videos we have is a child coming in with a foster parent, out of control, does better with the foster parent. And then reunified, because he is in fact better in the foster home, he's in a better place to be able to be cared for by that biological parent. And then we do PCIT with a biological parent. The key phrase is, are they do they reach medical necessity? And I would argue that it's not that long of a process, so if you're oppositional to